how you doing? This is John, and welcome to John's Long Box. Today we're talking with Terry Moore, the creator of Abstract Studios, and more importantly, Strangers in Paradise. I'm establishing my bona fides over here. These are the first print original from the Strangers in Paradise. Thank you for coming.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. Thanks, John.
Yeah, I first off, I'm a little starstruck, so forgive me. I'm fanboying out. First and foremost, I'm a comic book fan, so talking to creators of comics that I absolutely love, I get a little verklempt, as they say here in New York. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks. I appreciate that.
Okay, where to begin? There's so much I want to talk about. Okay, so I first became aware of you. It's strange. Oh, let's start at the beginning. Again, I'm getting carried away because I'm excited. I always try to start every video as if it's somebody's first time, welcoming them to the comic book world. And thank you guys. Welcome to the comic. So Terry Moore, I first became aware of you from Strangers in Paradise. So let's talk about Strangers in Paradise. What is the elevator pitch for Strangers in Paradise for those who do not know?
It's a kind of a love story meets super agents. It's romantic, but it has a crime element to it that really moves it along. And so you have the main character trying to get out of this criminal cabal, and boy, you can't get out. Once you're in, you're in. But she falls in love with a really sweet person, and so you kind of get involved in her life, and you start pulling for her and hoping she works it out. That's it, really.
Yeah, I got to say, the first off, I love your art. It's just like simple, clean. Your art reminds me of like the Hernandez brothers. It's just like, I don't know, just each line matters. If you were to remove one line, I think it would diminish each panel. But what really gets me, as much as I'm a fan of your art, is your characterization. Like I feel like I know these characters, and it's Kachu and Francine are the two main protagonists. And I became a fan of your comic when I realized at first, we're talking like decades of this comic going on, I couldn't stand Kachu. I hated her, but I had to get the next issue to see what she was up to. And I got to applaud that, because I'm old fashioned. I got to like my character. And I'm like, this Kachu, if I saw her in real life, man, I would tell her to get out of my house. But I had to get the next comic to see what was happening. So that, I think, is amazing.
Oh, cool. Just so long as you have a strong emotion about it.
Oh, definitely. I'm sure you didn't see it, but one of my earlier videos on my channel, I did Strangers in Paradise. And before that, I was doing like 5 or 6 minutes, and then I think I did like 22 minutes on it, just talking about your comic emotion. And I actually got like emotional during the making of that video. You know what I mean? So it's that's it. Like, I guess a creator wants to evoke emotion, and your comic, oh my God, this is evoke emotion. Some of the characters I hate. Oh, and by the way, I got to say, I love Kachu now. So
you two have made up.
It was like just this. What is it, like a cycle? You went from, and I know I'm talking a lot because I'm a fanboy now. Even Femur, I hated him, and then I kind of feel bad for him after a while.
Yeah, we all did.
Yeah,
as you get to know him and see, oh well, he's a mess, but he does keep trying.
I hate to say it. I guess this is revealing too much, but I see a little too much of myself.
That's the thing. We all do.
Yeah, I'm blanking out on his first name. I can't.
Freddie.
Yeah, Freddie. I was gonna say Freddie Femur, but then I'm thinking that's not the real name. That's the rock star. But now I'm thinking of Freddie.
Name.
Oh, and I went through a phase as a kid of writing letters to comics, and then I just stopped cold turkey. And I actually have a fan letter written in one of your issues. I couldn't remember what issue. I was going to take it out and show you, where I basically said I couldn't stand Kachu, and man, did the other readers not like that.
She has a lot of loyal friends.
Yes. My funny story about your comic is I missed an issue, and I'm a weirdo. I cannot read the next issue so if I miss issue 12 and you're up to 30, I'm only at 11 until I get 12. So yeah. I was frantically trying to find an issue. And I live in New York, and I actually visited a friend in Seattle. And I was like, we got to go to a comic book store. I got to find Strangers in Paradise. And it was like a mission. So his wife, who I just met, we went to this comic book store in the Pike's Fish Market. There's an excellent comic book down there. And I found it. And I just remember getting all excited. And when I brought it home, his wife is looking at it, and it's them. I don't remember what particular issue, but it's Freddie and Francine like talking about an apartment, looking into each other's eyes. And she just looks at me because, I had a stack of Thor and Fantastic Four. She goes, is this comic book for lesbians? And I was like, lesbians could buy it. I don't think Terry would mind it, but this comic book is great. It's a great comic. It's for everybody. I always thought that was funny.
Yeah.
So I had to say, again, all your characters are really good. One of the characters that really stood out for me was David. I don't reveal anything you don't want to, but are any of these characters like people from real life?
Well, I have to give the standard writer answer, which is nobody is a direct one-to-one from real life. They're all composite characters, but David is. If I had to describe him real quick, the triangle of Kachu, Francine, and David, it's a love triangle. And what I did was turn it so that the alpha person is female, Kachu, and David is the girl next door the babysitter next door, the girl next door.
Yeah.
David is the wholesome, nice person in the triangle, and then Francine is the third person in the triangle. And so David I just needed somebody who was not threatening to Kachu, who was able to act. Not many of us could be around Kachu for very long before she would kick us to the curb.
Oh no, yeah.
And there was something different about David that allowed him to stay in her very select circle. And there was something about, she was, no matter how much grief she gave him, he had a good heart, and he was still worth being friends with. So that was what was playing out over the long run, was this subtle story about it.
Yeah, I remember, again, here's another character. I didn't like David when you first introduced him. I was just like,
who did you like?
I like Francine. I like Francine from Pain.
Oh,
I like Francine. And the funny thing is, I don't particularly like Francine anymore. I like Kachu, and I like. I'm a complicated person, Terry. Yeah. But David, I was just like, oh, here comes the guy next door sniffing around and interfering in their bliss. That's the way I looked at him. But he won me over because he really, like, once I started to realize he was a good person, he wasn't tricked. Like I suspect, I'm like, Terry's throwing a curve. This guy's up to something. Even I guess is okay to spoil when you find out who his sister is. And I thought he was a mole, and I was like, this is sinister. Like I really, and you find out he really is just a good person. And I was like, oh, good, because I like a good person to root for,
Yeah. And in every story that you care about, you have an avatar in there somewhere, somebody that kind of represents you, and this is what you would try to do if you were there.
Oh,
he's kind of our avatar.
Am I more Kachu, or am I more Francine, or am I more David? I don't know.
Or Freddie.
I think all three of them are inside beating the crap out of each other. In my case. So, what did you do before? I know you had a comic before Strangers in Paradise, but unfortunately, I discovered you at Strangers in Paradise. So what was before?
Before it was all comic strips at home.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, so I really just came from comic strips. I mean, I read comic books growing up. I loved them and everything. But all my effort was towards cartooning and comic strips. I really, back in the last century, they had a thing called newspapers, and they were full of comic strips.
I think I look like I read a newspaper or two.
You may have seen one in your childhood. Anyway, they used to have comic strips, and that was something that people strive to want to do. Now, if you're a cartoonist, maybe you might strive to get cartoons into New Yorker or something like that. It's like that. It was a goal, and I tried to do that, be a newspaper cartoonist. Um, but it didn't work out. And because of when it was all crashed and burned, my dreams of doing that, what I found in the ashes was these core characters, Kachu, Francine, and David. I had developed those three characters and their little circle of how they interacted. And that's what I said, okay, well, I'll just try comic book story. And that's how I got started.
Oh, cool. Yes, I remember Kachu was originally like a fairy for.
Well, she was like a wood nymph, and
Yeah.
it was kind of way back in the day. And that sounds really stupid, but you have to realize I was very influenced by Cheech Wizard, you know, and so which was a really funny cartoon that it ran in like alternative magazines back in the day, in the stoner days. And Cheech Wizard was really funny, and he had the hat with just legs coming out from under it, and then there was this topless girl that hung out in the woods with all the characters, and it was kind of like a really demented pogo is what it was. It was like pogo on LSD, and I was really influenced by it, and so I had developed my own little wood nymph critter stories. And what the character that I came up with was Kachu, and that's why I got that insipid name, was because it kind of suited that character in the woods, a
Yeah.
little sprite or fairy or whatever it is. We have this, when you say fairy or sprite, you think of fairy tales for little kids, but there was a whole other version, from college cartoonists, stoned and drunk and drawing really, just trying to get your friends to piss their pants laughing at it, So that's where I was coming from with all that. And Kachu was the foul-mouthed one who would surprise you. So I took her and, put her in a regular person, and it still worked. I mean, she was like that
She's
smart
a foul-mouthed troublemaker. She's
yeah. And
and
I
she's
actually, once I started her in The Stranger in Paradise, I realized, I've known at least two bartenders who are exactly like Kachu.
oh
They looked like her, and they moved like her, and they handled their job. And all the guys that got drunk and tried to hit on her, man, just boom, 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 deflect. And so I really,
those tiny girls.
yeah, I mean, really tough, can stand on their own feet and don't take any crap from anybody. So that's where she came from,
Yeah. So in the comic, Kachu and Francine were like childhood friends, and then Kachu had like the troubled past and went off and disappeared, and she's coming back to escape her life in those intervening years. And I just have to bring this up because she became a Parker girl, and Darcy Parker is the main villain, and she runs this like worldwide network of super hot, sexy femme fatales that like put out their hooks and get senators and CEOs. So Darcy Parker was like the whatever his name is, Jeffrey Epstein, before Jeffrey Epstein made the news. So like now every time I read, like right now I'm reading Parker Girls, and I'm like, how much of this is like could really be happening? Like this isn't a fantasy anymore. This is real stuff.
Jeffrey Epstein could have been a Parker Girl client, and they would have known all his secrets and then leveraging it to get him to do what they want to do, because they have all his dirt.
Yeah.
That's actually a very old technique from the minute we started having spies.
Right. Honey trolls.
There were covert women's. There were two ways to spy. There was, go get a tough British guy with a gun under his coat, and he'll go in there and destroy the power plant. Or send in the female agent, and she becomes the mistress of the House of Lords and gets all the secrets they need to know out of the bedroom.
Yeah.
And that was actually a really popular thing to do back in the 18th, 19th, 20th century. And there was in my lifetime, when I was a very little boy, there was a big scandal in Britain where one of the House of Lords was discovered to have a mistress, and the mistress was actually a Russian spy. And oh, that was a bad day.
Yeah.
So that inspired me to have, like, the thought of Darcy Parker. And in the 70s, in LA, it was really decadent in LA, because it was, free sex decade. And everybody was sleeping with everybody. And it kind of inspired the idea that what if I knew that there were madams in Hollywood that were running these networks of women that were servicing all the new rich people that were full of themselves, that lived in Beverly Hills and Holmby Hills and all that. And that's where you get the song "All the Young Girls Love Alice" from Elton John.
Oh, okay.
You know, pimping that girl out to all the bored housewives. So that all that came together in my head and developed into this one lady in Beverly Hills who's filthy rich, running a gang of these women who are servicing sex clients, but they're picking who their clients are. It's not about the sex; it's about who they're having sex with,
Right.
and when they get them to talk, and people talk behind closed doors, and they especially talk when they're naked.
Yeah.
And that was what it was all about. And so this one lady, Dorsey Parker, suddenly had all the best dirt in town, and then leverage it and use it. And oh my God, what an empire!
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know how many spoilers I could give, but
Well, I think the book has been out for so long.
okay. I didn't want
I
to.
think you should be able to talk about it, because it's like talking
Now that
about
Darcy's gone, her empire is still like wreaking havoc. Like
Yeah.
that information still, and that's what your new series that's going on right now, Parker Girls.
Yeah,
is about.
Darcy's no longer a factor, but her right hand person, Lori Tamby, took it over, and Tamby has more. She's more of a Mark Wahlberg character.
She's legit scary.
she's Mark Wahlberg with boobs.
Yeah.
So she has other goals. She's after more like government threats, instead of just like, she doesn't care about getting rich. She's more like going after people that are,
She has a code of honor, like people.
national politics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tamby would have girls working in Washington. She doesn't care about Beverly Hills. She's all about Washington.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to make a comment that I probably shouldn't make. And of course, she pulls Kachu back in just when she thought she was out. She gets pulled back in.
Well, Kachu was really good.
Yeah.
Really good at what she did.
I was actually a little shocked of her and her Sharon. Oh, I can't even talk. Her Sharon Stone scene in Parker Girls. I was like, she's a mother now. She's got sweet little Francine at home, but she went right back to her secret agent thing. And I always felt like a schizophrenic. Like whenever I read Stranger in Paradise, I always thought it was like two girls living at home and fighting over wallpaper and silly stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, epic spies and jumping out of airplanes, and it was like, I want to know more about the wallpaper. And then next thing you know, you're finding out that the people are getting murdered, and you're like, oh no, how? And it's almost like they're just trying to shield Francine from this world that she just really shouldn't be in.
Right, Francine doesn't fit at all.
No.
I mean, she really is, the person living next door to you. She's just sweet and down to earth.
And then for those of you who don't know, you ended Strangers in Paradise on your own terms, which I'm a big fan of. Like did you feel like it was going on too long, or were you getting pressure, or you said, this is my goal all along, my story's over?
There was a time when I thought that was my ride for life, but the comic book industry was, it's gone through a lot of changes since the 90s. I started that book in the mid 90s, and it got to a point after we got close to 80 issues or 90 issues. I was thinking, well, I'll look at all these things that have been going on for decades, but the orders were getting smaller because it's an indie book anyway. And to be honest, they just got so small that I couldn't keep doing the individual issues because um, people were trade waiting. So the
Yeah.
sales on the issues went down, and they were waiting for a trade that I can't make because I couldn't make a living off the single issues. So it's a paradox, you know. I need one to do the other, and without the support, I couldn't do it. None of
Well,
it
I
worked.
bought all your single issues.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
you
old
know,
school.
this is really classic comic book syndrome if you're publishing. So everybody deals with this. So my solution was, okay, well, we just need to wrap it up, and then I need to start something brand new to get people fresh on board with single issues again. And that's what I did. I closed down the series and took a little break for about 6 months, and then came back with a brand new series that um, it boosted my sales, and I got to make a monthly income again instead of people trade waiting right away.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I've been doing ever since. You know, I do a series as long as the audience will support it, and when they stop supporting the single issues, I would close the story down and move on to another story.
I'd like, because after Strangers in Paradise, it was Echo, right? That was your,
Huh?
yeah. I remember Echo. I was actually set. I was like, oh man, what's gonna happen to Terry Moore? Like, is he gonna become an
Oh
accountant? Like,
no!
Strangers in Paradise ended. I was like, is he done with comics? You know, like, was this his? And then you announced Echo, and I was like confused because I'm like, this is like superheroes, you know. And Strangers in Paradise was, there was no superheroes except for that one little dream sequence that I thought was fun. You actually had Jim Lee and everybody draw a little couple pages. That was fun. And then Echo came out, and that was big spies, and I really liked the there was like a sense of menace in that, and it felt like real stakes. But at the same time, I got the same Strangers in Paradise vibe of characters. Like these were real people. Like, I don't mean to be mean to anybody who likes Batman, but I know Batman's not a real person. Bruce Wayne is, you know, a drawing, you know, and well, probably because so many different people took him over and he's inconsistent. But the character's an Echo. Like, she was a superhero. She had a distinct personality. She reacted a certain way, and she just felt real to the point where I was like, he could kill this person. I don't know what's going to happen at the, you know, people could die, you know, and then if I remember correctly, there was like ancillary characters from Strangers in Paradise. So I was like, wait a minute, this is in the same world. Like, Kachu could be here, you know, and I was like, what's going on? And then after that was Rachel Rising.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. So I'm a big fan of that. So Strangers in Paradise existed in a world where there is superheroes and there is supernatural, but you just didn't need any of that in the Strangers in Paradise story. I thought that. So you know, you have a pretty cool world if you ask me, and they're all connected. And then after that was 5 years. I'm trying to, you know, I'm getting old. I can't remember. And then now you have Parker Girl. And after 5 years, I thought you were done. I had that same little crisis. I'm like, well, his grand story's over. Now what? You know. And now I'm glad to see. And Parker Girls is so good. I normally I buy every issue, and I knew it was only 10, so I was like, I'm gonna read them all one Sunday, 10. But I had to read them before you came on, and I was like, you know, that I was hooked after the first issue.
Did you read Strangers in Paradise 25?
Yeah, oh yes, Strangers 25. Yeah, 25.
The XXB one.
Yeah,
And then there's another story. Oh, Motor Girl.
Motor Girl. Yes, Motor. You know, I got to say, Motor Girl, out of all your series, that one got me the most emotional because this I'm getting emotional now when I'm thinking about it for so many reasons. First off, a soldier with PSTD. I always get those letters mixed up, so I automatically sympathetic. Then she finally gets a place to call home, and people want to get her out of the home. You know, I just bought my house after having, you know, after COVID. I was like, we got to get our own place. We got to, you know, I was living in an apartment. So I could just imagine if somebody was to like tell me I can't live here anymore, you know. So that one I was really, really like anxiously awaiting every issue of that. So I really like that. I really liked Motor Girl. And then Serial. Oh my God, was I hooked to Serial. I looking at you right here, you're so mild manner, and then you did Serial, which had some really shocking pages and situations, and that's for those of you who don't know, it's about a serial killer.
Well,
That
it's quiet on the outside. On
right.
the inside, it's chaos.
I don't know if you see, but I had this writer artist Fabrizio Aiello on my channel, and he is, you'd hire him to do your taxes or be your lawyer. He's just such a clean cut person, and then the things he draws, his imagination. I'm like, you need help.
It's about what's on the inside.
Yes, I don't know. Tonic Ball is a big fan of yours, and Tonic Ball is a person I've had on my channel. He does a comic called Saving the World. One of the people I got to meet, and he raves about you all the time. And he was like, "You got to get Terry Moore. You got to get Terry Moore." And I just didn't think, no, I'm not big enough. Who am I? And I just reached out to you, and you were so nice. So I got to thank Tonic Ball. But again, I'm fanboying out over here. I like what he says over here. I think character really wins over specific setting or genre. I feel like Terry's characters work regardless of what universe or genre thrown in. And the fact that you went from just regular crime drama to superheroes to supernatural to serial killers and now back to like worldwide, I can only call it like Epstein crime level. This proves what Tonic's saying over here.
It's always about the people. It's always about people, and people find extraordinary things to do. But then there's also Brenda Starr. No, less Brenda Starr and more like Apartment 3G with crime. But yeah, I mean, people find things to do with themselves that are just good and bad. But there's also this other aspect to life where we're living on a rock, hurtling through space. So there's a extraordinary aspect to our lives that we tend to ignore because we're focused on our iPhone and a lunch.
Oh my God.
And you forget that there's a planet right above you and 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 12 dimensions of all this. So I like to, writers like to tap into all that and push them all together and see what you get.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. What you just said, it just reminded just 2 days ago. I'm working nights this week, so that's why I had to change the time. When I scheduled it, I didn't know I was working, and I work at the airport. I'm in New York, so I take the train, and then I got to switch to public bus. So I'm waiting for my bus, and it's 4:00 in the morning. I'm trying to come home, and it's drizzling out, and I got my cup of coffee, and I'm just thinking about, oh God damn, I'm so glad I got overtime because my air conditioning just broke. I just bought this damn thing, and now I got to spend $500 more to get this new air. And I hear sobbing, and I turned and I looked, and there was a street walking hooker that I've seen for 2 weeks now, just walking up, but she's sitting on a box sobbing, and I practically broke down in tears because all I could think of is what was so bad that a street walking hooker is crying in public in the rain. Like, she didn't go inside, she can't control herself, and I wanted to go over and talk to her, but what are you going to do? Next thing you know, the cuffs are on, and I'm trying to tell my wife, I was just talking to the hooker, honey. But I got on the bus, and it just put everything in perspective. And I'm just like, I'm talking to Terry Moore, and I got friends on YouTube, and I have a nice house. And, it's what you just said, there's a whole world out there, and I'm worried about my air conditioning unit. And here's this poor woman that I haven't seen her since. Like, I'm actually like going to work now. I hope I see her on the way home. Like, and when I told my wife, she was just like, "Oh my God, is she okay? Did you talk to her?" I was like, "No, I took the coward's way out and just got on the bus and went home." I'm kind of ashamed of myself, but
and see, there's the thing about humanity is before that moment, before you saw that, she was the street walking hooker. But
right.
when you saw her cry, she was a broken woman, person. And, that shows the humanity in you and how we all react to, the more you know about somebody, the more you care. And if you just write about superheroes that never show any humanity, then they're just become like widgets and icons in a story. Those are the stories you don't care about.
Right.
It's just battle bots. But if you get to the human level, you've got a story anybody can relate to, and it doesn't matter what they're doing. They could be on a quest to find a ring, or they could be trying to get secrets out of a British House of Lords. Doesn't matter. It's just human beings doing what they do, So the only secret to writing there is.
Yeah.
Write about humans.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's again back to Echo. That's what I liked. I can't remember her secret identity, but I just liked the way she reacted to things. She felt like a real person. Like I know Superman's not real. I know Peter Parker's not real, but your characters feel real. So do you develop them whole cloth, or do they write themselves, or is it just kind of like this is an idea for a story, and I'm gonna see what happens?
Well, if I could use the example you have given us, it would be like I have an idea for a streetwalker, um, and then I have this one scene in my mind. This is how we meet her, because this is now how you've introduced her to us. This is how
Yeah.
we know her now, and um, and we see her at her worst, lowest moment, and then I would begin to wonder what happened before and what happened after.
Yeah, I can't help it. I still think of it.
Well, and that's the reader's curiosity too. I mean, you would you would your mind would begin to think about it, and then you start writing down her name, where she lives, why is she doing this, what does she want to do tomorrow
Yeah.
about it, and there's a story there. She has a story. Her life is worth knowing about,
Yeah.
and it's really that way with everybody. You never know what's going on inside somebody. You could be standing next to somebody who doesn't give you any signals at all, but they may have learned today that, they have cancer.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And that they're the third person in their family to get this same one. And so, that it's just, you never know, and people are very interesting, but uh,
Yeah. It,
we're always, when we find somebody that will open up their story to us, we really begin to care what happens to them, you know.
yeah.
And I'm afraid that to say it, I'm sorry to say it, but that's kind of what a writer does. Is he gives you a person and opens them up eventually, piece by piece. And some people describe it as like unpeeling an onion, the layers off an onion, until you can get to the middle. And that's kind of what you're doing with your series, is doing that.
Yeah. You just said I'm a construction worker, and we you don't really see too many old guys at my job, and I was partnered up with the guy who was 76 years old. First,
Wow.
first off, the guy was just ripped, 76 years old, not like a frail 76 years old. And I used to bust his chops. Why don't you, Mikey, his name was Mikey, why don't you retire? What's wrong with you, Mikey? Why don't you retire? What are you doing wrong with your life? I can't wait till I retire. And after about a week, he finally turned around. He goes, I had cancer, and I missed 18 years of work, and I'm trying to catch up for this time. He goes, and then my daughter died. And I was like, and ever since then, I don't bust anybody's chops. You know what I mean? And then he just went back to like, hey, okay, let's get to work. And for a minute, I realized that this is a sad person with a sad story. That's
This man has a
trying
story.
his best to. And I'm like, he put me in my place. I realized I'm not teasing anybody about stuff like that anymore. It's none of my business.
Yeah. It's amazing. People do amazing things when they're pushed.
Yeah.
Um, and okay, look at, say, like Taylor Swift. Um, Everybody thinks she's on top of the world. This girl has been working nonstop. Don't you think there's a reason why she would rather be working nonstop than just kicking back and living on a ranch with pretty horses? There's a reason why she is driven like she is. She's very smart, very talented, and she's working her ass off.
Yeah.
Why?
She's always touring. You're right about that. I
Why?
never thought about
And
it.
she's not done what a lot of new money people do, which is wear it and turn that into their identity. It's not about that. It's totally about her music. There's a story there, and we're not going to know it for a long time until she's ready to open up about it.
Wow. Wow. I never thought
And
about it.
I'm sure her fans think, well, we're getting it bit by bit in her songs, or autobiographical songs. But no, there's a bigger story there. And it's the same way with the Beatles. When they came along, they just worked nonstop, and then it was one hit after another. And you don't find out until 30 years later what it was like behind the scenes and why they were so driven, you know.
Yeah.
And so everybody has a story, whether they
Yep.
are crying on a park bench in the rain or whether they just won't get off the stage.
Oh, I just want to go back to what Arthur said. Arthur's a old time. He used to work for Stan Lee and Jack Kirby back as a kid. So he's been around with comics forever. He says in the late '90s, independent comics started to fail and the comic bust hit. Did you find that comic bust affected your sales?
Yeah, he's right.
Yeah.
We all, I think the indie Brat Pack thing, that group of Jeff Smith, Dave Sim, Colleen Duran, even Neil Gaiman, there was a bunch of them, Hepcats, all that. They kind of rose up during a period when people were buying, stores were ordering everything because
Yeah.
stores were super healthy, and a lot of the health came from the trading card industry. The trading cards were super popular, and collecting, that was all about collectability, and it really boosted up the comics business too.
Rising
It
tide.
made comics collectible, and people started making 20 variation covers. And so when the card people pulled out in the early '90s, it really affected the comic shops, and they started tightening up their orders, and the indie industry shrunk down too. But at the same time, there was another thing that Arthur may remember this, that if you had an indie comic and you were reading about them all the time in the magazines, like, oh, this one's good, but you can't find it anymore. There was you couldn't find like issue 9 of Hepcats or issue 3 of Wandering Star. What they decided to do was collect them into these trade paperbacks and put them out, so that if you weren't around for those tiny print run singles, you could find the trade paperback and keep it in print. And so I really feel like that Brat Pack indie movement kind of launched trade paperbacks. And then it was several years, like 3 years or 4 years, before Marvel said, okay, well, we'll reprint some old crap in the trade and see how it does. It did really well, and so then they were all in on it.
Yeah.
But that's how I remember it, and I think there was even a Wizard article about it at one point.
I've had friends that used to be into comics, and life gets in the way, kids, work, or whatever. So they only get trade paperbacks because they're like, I just want to get the whole story, sit down and read it over like an evening or two. I don't want to.
Sure.
I totally understand that thinking.
Like reading Tintin. I mean,
yeah.
Tintin came out a page at a time, and I'm really glad I have the Tintin collected books.
Yeah, I'm right over here. My Tintin's right over there too.
Yeah. Well, same thing. I get it. I totally understand.
Yeah,
The problem is for an indie creator is I can't make a living between trade paperbacks. So I'm doing what Stephen King said he wished he could do, which is sell it a chapter at a time until you have the whole book done, and then sell the book. And then you live off the chapter sales, and then make another income off the collected book. Book authors wish they could do that, and comic people have been doing it for a long time.
Do you only do your own work? You did some comics for Image, like was you did Lady Supreme, if I remember correctly.
Oh man, you bring up the one I don't want to talk about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The one
you didn't want me to talk about.
It's the only one. I mean, oh God. If we're going to talk about that, we might as well talk about my years in prison. No, I mean, it's okay. Lady Supreme was silly. It was not a character I liked, but it was just one of those things I did on a side job. And then I drew a cover, and I drew her with big boobs and a normal cleavage, straight line. And then it went down to Mike Deodato Studios in South America to be colored. And when it came out back, they had taken out her real boobs and given her triple D false boobs. Just the basketballs.
Yeah.
I've had to sign that cover ever since.
Why is this comic sticky? Never mind. Don't tell me.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to embarrass you. See, that's why I always ask.
Let's not mention all the stuff I did with Marvel and DC and Fables and all that other stuff.
Yes, you did stuff with Fables. Yes. Yes.
Star Wars.
What did you do with Marvel? Forgive me for not knowing.
I did some Spider-Man. What is that book called? Ultimate Marvel Team Up Spider-Man.
Okay.
And I also wrote Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane for a year, and also wrote Gen 13 for a year.
Yep.
Um,
Well, yep. You did the
yeah,
bootleg. I remember that.
yeah. Thanks. Gen 13 was, you know what I liked about Gen 13? And even Mark Waid talked to me about it. He liked it. Was that it had a speedy character in there. Nobody had ever given a reason. And I think the idea that, like the Flash or somebody is just going fast because they can just move their body that fast. I think that's absurd in the world of physics. Um, that's a 5-year-old reason why the Flash can run fast. Like a 5-year-old would think of that. So I came up with this idea that um, I launched off. It's that the fact that they're saying that the universe is in constant decay, and so from 1 second to the next is a different set of physics because it's decaying from the Big Bang. And I wrote that this one speedy character, that what he had been able to do was control his decay, so that if he could back it up and make his decay positive and fuller, he went back in time. If he decayed faster and controlled his molecules, he could decay it faster in time. He would go
That's really
forward in time. So this would allow him to look like he is just flying. And it's all about a molecular control, in the same way that you and I would like tense our stomach. He can just like tense up or something like that, and
It's such a cooler explanation than Speed Force, which I always thought was lame.
it's much better than, oh, he's a fast guy at track running. Anyway, that was the thing I did put in Gen 13, and they had to deal with a criminal that was able to like whoop, whoop, and that was how he was doing it. And Mark said, "You know what? I like that. Can I use that?" And I said, "Yeah," because nobody else is. But Mark has never used it, so I still may use it.
Yeah.
So I need all of you to forget that idea right now.
Well, what were we talking about? Oh yeah.
What?
So Brian Bow, Brian Bow
What?
is the creator of the wonderful comic Wolf and Batsy over at Alterna Comics.
Yeah, I agree, Brian.
You okay, great. You could know he's a good comic. A chance meeting with a crying street walker at 4 a.m. sounds like an interesting character. Great opening scene for somebody. Yeah, I hate that I thought of that when I was on the bus driving away. That like, oh man, I could use this poor suffering thing to put in a page. But I thought of that.
I hate to tell you this, John. You're right on the one hand, but on the other hand, every writer in history has had that moment.
Yeah, I know. Like I'm thinking,
it could be somebody in Starbucks. You're watching somebody on their phone in Starbucks, and they get a message, and you see their face fall, and you're wondering, I wonder what that was.
Yeah,
and it launches an idea.
My sister always says that to me. She goes, "You notice all the things that we didn't realize that should have been noticed."
Yeah, there you go. That's it. That's the writer or the artist in the room. Yeah, you have an artistic side to you there.
Arthur Tripp, he likes that. He gave me a comic book produced by the VA about troubled vet mixed up his. So he appreciates a Motor Girl that you, because he's a vet also. Arthur Tripp did what I forget if it was 1 or 2 tours in Vietnam, and he works with troubled vets. Guy's a saint. He also says that he loved Tintin and is drunken. And the Wizard got his speed powered by Mongoose. Yes, the Wizard. I love the Wizard.
Mongoose blood infusion.
Yeah. The kid in me, every time I saw the Wizard in comics, I was like, this guy's name is the Wizard and he wears a yellow costume. and then Fred Edenbeck made that same joke in a comic, and I was like, yes.
I'm just going to whiz right over there.
Yeah, I'm just going to whiz right by.
Which is actually a line from an OTV, a radio show as well.
So this whole concept that you had about controlling decay, that's such a superhero. Are you a fan of superhero comics to this day, or?
Yeah, if they're logical and make sense. If they have a power for no freaking reason whatsoever, like for instance, Superman has all this extra power because he's under a yellow sun. Well, that's BS. The sun isn't yellow. The sun is white, hot, bright, and it's only yellow because of our atmosphere. So you're saying Superman has power because we have a dirty atmosphere? that actually changes every second, and there's a big difference between night and day. That doesn't make sense. And he can fly. Why? Why can he fly? And if he's flying, where's the propulsion coming from?
Right.
You know, I mean, even a fish has a reason, but he's just like up and away, and I don't see anything moving. There's nothing rippling. There's no surf.
Right.
How is this happening?
That bothers me when the Flash just runs through a crowd and nobody's falling down. Nobody's at least getting hit in the face with a newspaper. Like it.
Yeah, there's no backwind effect.
Yeah.
Like if you know, like when a street bus passes you going at full speed, and it just brings
Right.
all. But that was a good thing about the boys in the comic and the show. The speedster would just run right through people and rip them apart like
Yeah. Yeah.
like a blade.
H-
But he was an asshole, wasn't he, for doing that?
Garth Ennis famously doesn't like superheroes, so he made a superhero comic book to
Yeah, here's the
beat the piss out of
here's the
superheroes.
consequences. Here's the consequences.
Yeah.
You know? But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I want something to make sense, and even Spider-Man makes more sense than say Superman. So Spider-Man, at least you could pretend, okay, radioactive spider, give you some weirdo stuff. Okay, I'll buy that. You know, and then especially when they introduced him, they had this wonderful learning period
Right.
of crawling around in your bedroom and figuring it out, and that really helps us kind of like make the transition to okay, you know.
I know now is when you're going to look at me like I'm a crazy person, but I play a role playing superhero game, and I've been playing it for 30 years. And every once in a while, I'll get new players, but for the most part, I've been playing with the same group of people, and it's a continuing story.
Okay.
And when they get new superheroes, I just tell them, okay, there's things you got to do. So they have their powers. I don't know if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons, stuff like that, but
No.
I always get a kick out of them figuring out all the tricks they could do with their superpowers. You know, like I don't tell them, and then my other friends know, don't just tell them all the. So they really are like rookie superheroes. Like, oh, I didn't realize I could do that. I love that trope of the superhero learning what they could do. Like
Yeah.
I hate when you just get hit by the lightning and you're just like, oh wow, and you instantly are super experienced. That's why I like Echo. She was figuring out what she could do.
Yeah, there has to be a transitional period. That my favorite part of every movie is the arrival part, the discovery part. Like my favorite part of Independence Day is the first 30 minutes.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
all the arrivals, you know, and that's my favorite part. And then, oddly enough, okay, what is this character?
Oh, characters like Superman and Flash is
Yeah,
they created in the 40s and now they're taken too seriously. They were
I know,
created
it's like
in the 40s and now adults.
yeah. They were supposed to be like radio shows, and you know, Zorro. If you could believe in Zorro, you could believe in Batman. And now we don't believe in either one. So
Right. Most of Spider-Man powers are actually the powers of a fly, not a spider. That I know now. Thanks a lot for ruining Spider-Man for me, Tonic Mall.
shut up, Tonic.
Yeah, I thought we were friends.
You're whizzing on our dream here. Oh Lord, too much truth. Too much truth.
Which okay? Oh, I was going to say, did you see the movie The Arrival?
Yes.
The first, I forget if it's 2 hours, but the first half of that movie where they're meeting the aliens and learning how to communicate. Oh my God, was that fascinating? And then the last half of the movie was like, oh, okay, now it's just a science fiction movie. But you know, I could have turned that movie off halfway through and been satisfied. They're learning the language and how the alien. I love when aliens are aliens. I know Star Trek just puts little bumps on the forehead for budget reasons, but I can't stand when all the aliens are just like, they're the Roman aliens, and these are the Nazi aliens, and these are the Viking aliens, and we understand them.
I did not understand Arrival at all. I'm the Wizard of Dreams. That's your superpower. I was on dreams. Arrival, I didn't understand it when I watched it. I just thought, well, this is slow and convoluted, and I guess there's a deeper lesson in here, but I didn't get it. And then earlier this year, I read an article about it, and the makers said that the point of it was that the aliens did not live in linear time.
Correct. Yeah, they lived
once. And so the movie was trying to present itself to show that the difference between her memories and the future and the alien connections was all in a circle loop.
Right.
And all that. So that's why it was it. I don't think it was cut well. I don't think the movie was edited correctly for that story to communicate, because I know a lot of really clever people who have seen every sci-fi movie and they didn't pick up on that either, you know. So that was a movie that failed. That was the editor's fault. The director was too obscure.
I like the concept of their language controlled how they perceive reality, and because of their language, she was able to perceive reality in a different way, which enabled her to interpret time in a different way.
Well, and that was supposed to be one of your first clues, which was they're not writing in a sentence.
Right. Yeah.
They were giving the whole thought in one splash.
Yeah.
The entire paragraph in one splash. And it's not meant to be read one into the other, but just a scene, and you get it all at once, like a Robert Heinlein, I grok it all at once, you know?
Yeah.
Well, so,
and then they had like 7 appendages, and they didn't look like anything. They were cool. Yeah.
Maybe that meant there were 7 dimensions.
Oh
yeah.
Maybe there's a multiverse and nobody dies, everybody comes back. What do you think of that going on in
the multiverse?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Enough said with that. Yeah. I find it just means, hey, look, this movie has no consequences. This story has no consequences. Right. This means, like, if I'm writing this and then Terry Moore takes over, he could just disregard everything I did. And you know.
You know what? Look at it this way. Okay, so Neil says we're all Stardust, but the transition is hell. When you go back to Stardust, it's going to hurt like hell. You're going to care. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
So there's 2 sides to the. You can get all mental as you want about it, but we're here living it, and we have to actually be thrown against the brick wall to become Stardust again, and it hurts. Yep. So give me a break.
So, Parker Girls, I only got up to issue 7. I didn't get issue 8 yet. I assume you're done, because I remember you said let me finish issue 10 before we talk. So, is there something coming out after? Do you have the next series in the works?
I have several. It's like always. I have a number of things competing for top. For the number, me next.
Yeah.
So I keep these notes in my notebook here about the character stuff and all that. And as you can tell, what I tend to do is I'll get one thing will spark an idea for a story, and then I throw a lot of baggage at it and flesh it out with everything I've ever experienced and thought, you know. So, but really, all I need is that one moment idea, like Tonic was saying, you know, the lady crying, seeing a lady crying on a bench in the rain may spark an entire story.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's funny. Stranger in Paradise. I remember when I got the idea for the whole story. I just had characters and I didn't know what to do with them. I had these 3, the core group, and I was driving past the Rice University. I live in Houston near Rice University.
Okay.
The campus. And they have these big 2-story houses along the edge of campus where people rent and live, you know, apartments. And there was a house. It looked like a 2-story house, but I knew it was multi-level living. And I was sitting at the light looking at the building, and I was looking at the 2nd floor. And all of a sudden, I could just picture my 3 characters living up there in one apartment, and how they were navigating this triangle, living. They're not a threesome.
No,
3 people.
They're 3 people.
This one loves that one, but that one loves that one, but that one loves that one. It's a mess, and suddenly I could just picture it. And I came home, and I drew a picture that I published online of all of them in the same room by a couch, and they're all in the same room. And the minute I saw that, I just got the story. I figured it out, and I started writing issue 1, and I was off. And it all happened from just being able to see something, and just it gave me the setting that I needed, sense of place.
Yeah, and Abstract Studios is your comic company. Did you shop it around and then get discouraged, or did you always want to do it yourself? Oh, you did.
You're the only guy that ever asked me that, John.
Oh, I'm
No
kind of
one
a
has
special
ever
person,
asked.
or at
Yeah.
least the doctors at school said I was special.
Yeah, you are. No, I think you may have meant it in a special way. No, I did. I shopped it for a year, and I sent it out to everybody, and they all said no. And where I really wanted to go was Fantagraphics because
Oh yeah, yeah,
I
Fantagraphics.
I thought that the Hernandez brothers
Yeah,
were.
your title next to the Love and Rockets would have been awesome.
I just thought they were incredible, and that book was awesome. And I knew that mine was different enough that
Still a big fan of that book.
I am too, and their talent is clear. Um, but there was a guy who was working there. It was not Gary, but it was Gary's right hand man. And I would send him that, and he would send me a long letter telling me what was wrong with it. And then I would try again. And this went on back and forth for a year. And he never liked anything I sent him. And so it never did go, and I never did get to fulfill my dream of being at Fantagraphics with it. And I gave up, and then I just started self-publishing. And then about a few years later, after I was, I guess, finished with the series, I was talking to Gary, and I told him about that. I said I tried for a year to get through that front office, with that guy, and he just never liked any of it. And Gary said, "Oh man, I wish I'd known that." So Gary never knew that I was trying to get in the
Oh
door.
man, do you feel it's a blessing in disguise? That
Yeah, I mean, it set me on the path, and sometimes I feel like the universe pushes you away from what you want towards what you should be doing,
yeah,
and that was clearly a case of that.
I look back at like key moments of my life that I'm like I should have done this and I should have done that, and everything seemed to have worked out. I can't really complain. My only complaint is my air conditioner broke. So I must be doing something right.
Hmm. Yeah,
But you did go to Image for a while.
that was well. Arthur will remember why. It was because when I started out in '93, we had 18 distributors, comic book distributors, and by the time we got to that, everybody's going to Image. We were down to like two or three, and then there were only two big ones, Diamond and Capital. And Capital was famous for carrying all of the indie guys. Diamond, you had to really work hard to get into, but I was there. And then Capital folded. Oh my God, we were down to one distributor, and we thought we were all going to die and be
Yeah, I
working at
remember.
Macy's next year. So we all were looking for shelter, and Jeff went over to Image famously, and somebody else went over to Image, and then I called up Jim Lee, who I'd been seeing regularly anyway. He was very accessible back in those days, and I said, what do you think? And he said, yeah, come on over. And so I did, and after about a year there, I'm doing 8 issues through the Image imprint, which was a lot of fun. They're a lot of fun to work with, and they're great guys, and I loved it. But after about a year, I had been able to get a new contract with Diamond that assured me a future. And you make more money if you simply publish yourself. And that's
Yeah. No, there's no middleman to take a cut.
right. So I went back to self-publishing so I could have a life, do that. If I had stayed at Image, I would have to do multiple books and write, 3 different books a month, and plus draw on the side.
Yeah.
But if I self-publish, I could do my book and eke out a living.
Tonic says my comics were really crappy until Saving the World, which is only barely passable. So I'm blessed knowing some of my earlier comics. And then his follow-up: when he crashes, he's going to abstract. So you got no choice, Terry. Tonic calls whether you like it or not.
Try to get through my front office.
Yeah. So you mentioned Fantagraphic, and now I have to talk about this. But Joe Matt just died. Were you familiar with Joe Matt at all and his comic Peep Show? He was he was Fantagraphics.
But I never met or interacted with anybody on their roster. All the guys from New York and Canada and the upper Northwest, they're just they live on a different planet than I do. I just never ran into them, never was at a dinner with them, never knew them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Joe Matt, for those of you who don't know, he had a comic called Peep Show, and I think they were from Montreal or Toronto. I forget. I guess if you're Canadian, those are the only two real choices anyway. My wife's Canadian, so I'm busting her chops. She's listening. But
Hey.
But yeah, he just passed, so I'm going to make a video about Peep Show this week. I was just curious if you
I just never was lucky enough to meet the man. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah. I just oh, my wife just yelled that I'm in trouble.
Oh, big time. Because we all heard it. I mean, it's global. It's global now.
Can't take it back. It's on the internet.
No.
It's on the internet. So you just had a success. Hold on a second. I just want to grab this. If I was professional, I would have had it.
Okay, we're all going to look at the Green Lantern charger box back there.
Look at all my nonsense behind me.
Oh, I'm glad you have that one.
I just got this. This is Terry Boys After Dark. Ooh, nice. After Dark, some spicy.
Yeah, this is what happens after dark.
Yeah, this is what happens in that little house, that 2-family house.
Yeah.
So you did a Kickstarter for this.
Yeah, my first one.
That was your first Kickstarter or crowdfunding. Yeah. Right. How was that experience for you?
It was fantastic.
Oh, good.
People have been telling me, you should do that. Everybody's doing it. It's like smoking cigarettes, in junior high. You should be doing this. Everybody's doing it.
Peer pressure always works, right?
Peer pressure. I was under a lot of peer pressure at school to do a Kickstarter. So I didn't know how to do it exactly. There's a lot of details. So I was fortunate enough to run across this guy on Twitter, Pat Shand, who has been doing Kickstarters for a living. And I hooked up with Pat, and Pat guided me through the nuts and bolts and helped us build the page and everything. So thank you, Pat Shand. I highly recommend him, Shand. I highly recommend him to approach him if you want to do your Kickstarter stuff. And he does it for a really small fee, and it's really worth the time and trouble. But I wasn't even going to do it until we had a panel somewhere, and I did it with a bunch of friends who are already doing Kickstarters. And they said, this panel is an intervention on Terry and Robin Moore to get them to do a Kickstarter. So we did, and I'm glad we did it. It was great.
I'm glad you did too. I enjoy this.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's
I wanted to
everybody. It's art pieces.
Yeah, I wanted to do an art book because I can't take a year and a half off to draw a story and then try to sell it later.
Yeah,
because I'm not rich. Only rich people can do that. So.
Yeah, I'm going to try to do a crowdfunding at some point, but I'm working overtime, so I could, I'm a construction worker. My wife works. Otherwise, I can't make a comic unless I could pay my bills otherwise, So
you're either the first year and a half I was doing Strangers, I kept my day job, which was a TV editor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so that was like working 9 to 6 every day, 9 to 7. And then I'd come back, eat dinner, and then draw from like 9 to 1 a.m.
Wow.
And I did that for a year and a half until the comics was strong enough to take over. So yeah, it's a tough haul to do both.
Yeah, I think that's I keep talking about Marvel and DC when I really shouldn't anymore because I'm kind of down on them. But I hear them talk. These guys are writing Spider-Man and whatever, and they can't make their bills pay. So it's got to be rough for the independent guys. You got to do it.
Well, I mean, just do the math. I mean, it pays like $100 a page to write a comic. Yeah. So there you go. There's 20 pages. You just made $2,000. Good luck for the rest of the month. Right?
Yeah.
And if you're drawing it, it's like base rate is like $240 a page to pencil it. And it's like, $100 to $150 to ink it. So do the math, and you'd be better off working at Kinko's. So that's why you find a lot of that stuff is jobbed out to either very young people that can, either work multiple jobs, or that's enough money, or a lot of it is done in South America where people have studios with 15 hungry artists who will give me anything, I will do it.
Yeah, well, Marvel was doing that since I, Pablo Marcos was Filipino, they were mailing him Jim Kirby artwork to ink and send back, Tonic Ball says he worked repairing tires for a year while making my comic and had a mental breakdown. All I could do is make. Right. Well, you didn't have a mental break. You still are having it, Tonic Ball. I just got to let you know. And Brian Bow says exact same. He did comics as a side job. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to.
Right.
It's either that or the comic will never exist, right?
Yeah.
You have to make time for it. And that's the big thing, is that you get to a point in your life where you think, okay, in my case, it was like I've gone 30-something years without making a comic book. I don't want to die like that. I am going to do it now. This is the year. I'm going to do it now. And you say, okay, every night I'm going to come home and do another page or something. And that's how you do it.
So that interesting question. How long does it take you to do a page?
All day now. Now that this is all I do, I'll spend all day drawing and penciling that page.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
And then, sometimes I can ink it that night. If it's not ready, I finish the drawing the next day and ink it. It only takes an hour to 3 hours to ink a page. What's hard is penciling a page, because that's where you can draw somebody great looking or somebody awful looking, is with that pencil.
Which brings to me, you draw the cutest girls. I got to say, when I see Francine, was she modeled off of Jennifer Connelly? Because that's who should play her in a movie.
Young Jennifer Connelly from like Rocketeer. That's
a great Rocketeer. Yes, definitely.
But I also love. I love every actress. I love every woman I meet. I like women, and that's why I do what I do. That's why I focus on women-centric stories, because I don't care about guys that are gross and smelly. I really would like to spend I used to say this. I put it this way. If I'm going to do a comic, I have to be really good at drawing that character, and I'm going to spend all day, the rest of my life, drawing that character, like drawing their butt. Now, do I want to be drawing Batman's butt every day for the rest of my life, or do I want to draw Francine's butt every day for the rest of my life? Those were my choices. It's as simple as that.
That's funny. And if you read Tonic Ball's comics, you can see what he spends all day drawing.
Yeah.
So I could talk all night, but the reason why I changed it, because I have to be out of the house by 7:30 to get to work on time. I would love to talk. Usually I need to go to bed early, so they flipped the school. You should see me the other day. I couldn't figure out which day of the week it was. I was just
too tired.
Yeah, too tired.
Flipping schedules like that. That's
and I think it's going back to Monday. So at least I have a weekend to reorient myself. But this I don't even know. I forgot today was Wednesday. I almost missed. Yeah, I scheduled you a month ago, and then I wouldn't have showed up. My wife's like,
and if you're doing construction work, how's your back? How are your knees?
Oh, my knees. It's funny because I remember making fun of my dad. He would stand up and he would go, "Oh boy," when he stood up, and now I'm going, "Okay." Every time I stand up, I go, "Okay." I'm mentally preparing myself to stand up. And
I got this. I can do this.
And when I look at stairs, I actually hesitate for a second. And when I was fixing this house, put in a banister, and I'm like, we don't need a banister. And the guy who's working with me goes, trust me, you're gonna have people that are gonna want a banister to come down this. Now I'm like, oh my god, I can't believe I don't have I didn't want a banister. At work now, I used to laugh because I used to just run the straight path. There'll be cinder blocks in the way. It's a construction site. There's messes all over the place. Just hop over everything, blah blah. Now I'm looking. There'll be one cinder block, and I'll walk around it because I got stuff in my hand. I'm carrying something. I'll be 55 next month. You know what I mean? It catches up.
I know.
Let me ask you, drawing all day. You must have your own. Like I remember I met John Romita Sr. at his house, and he showed me his hand, and I'm not even joking. Like this top portion of his hand, all bent like this, and he says it's from or bent the other way. It's from pushing down at the. And he goes, I can't draw anymore. It hurts. And he had fan art all late that he would do a little bit every day because he goes, it's going to take me 6 months before I could finish this because I can't draw. Do you have any ailments like that?
Yeah. And, for the first 15 years, people would say, "How's your hand? You must be tired." And I said, "No, my hand's great." And it felt great for the first 15, 20 years. But now, especially this last couple of years of binge working, because I've also been binging on a lot of commissions and sketches and doing, I always try to show up at a show with like 24 sketches, to fill the little book. So it's just a lot of extra drawing. And yeah, I've got a lot of chronic stuff going on, and I nurse it so that I can keep my hand as long as I can. Um, but yeah, and you see people that were really known for having those beautiful smooth lines, like Charles Schultz had
Yeah.
a beautiful smooth line in the 60s. And then you see his work from like the 80s,
Yeah.
and it has these little cusps on it, So yeah, it's a thing, And I think eventually what you get to is the Renoir stage, and then when he was in his 90s, they just taped the brush to his wrist, and he just painted these big ones. You just use a bigger canvas, So yeah, you do what you gotta do.
And do you feel like being isolated? You're working by yourself, because I'm a pretty sociable person, and I'll go to any job and I'm like, hey, I if I had to, be a comic book artist, I think the one thing that would get to me is just sitting there by myself drawing, living in my own thoughts. Anything like that ever get to you?
I'm kind of introverted anyway.
Okay.
So it's not like every time I go out into public and in a crowd, I get put in my place or something. So the less of that I get, the better.
Oh.
So I'm happy to just kind of live more of a monk life, and then just go out and when I go out, and it's really because I want the books out into the world. That was my mission from day one. It's not about me. It's about the book. I want the book out there. And just because you put a book in a bookstore doesn't mean it's going to sell.
Right.
You have to go out there and make people know about it and all that.
Everybody has to be their own Stan Lee nowadays.
Yeah. So that's my deal. And that's my point of view, my mindset for doing all that. If I wasn't promoting my work and trying to get it out there, no, there's no reason to go out.
You have a hardcore following, though. I mean, there's people who have Parker Girl tattoos, and
yeah, but notice the difference there. They don't have Terry tattoos; they have Kachu tattoos.
Right. Well,
so it's not about me; it's about Kachu and the characters and all that.
Well, I'm not going to get a.
You have to.
Yeah, I'm not going to get a Todd McFarlane tattoo. I'll get a Spawn. You know what I mean?
Well, you might get a 10% discount on all Todd merchandise.
You can afford it. You can afford it.
I think if you're a writer or an artist, you need to realize who the famous one is. It's not you; it's your character, and you're not a rock star. I've seen a rock star, and a comic book artist is not a rock star.
Yeah, big fish, small pond.
Yeah, so don't get a big head about it. If you've got popular characters, then basically you're the manager of a popular band.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, you're Brian Epstein, and you lucked into the Beatles. Good for you.
Wow.
But it's not about you.
That is a really interesting perspective.
That's my perspective on it. Kachu is the cool one in the room, not the nerd who draws her.
Well, I think that's a good time to leave. I have to be on the road by 7:30, or I'll miss my train. So,
okay, you got to get going.
Yeah, I got to get going. First off, thank you for coming. Thank you for talking so long. You've been very generous and interesting. And thank you for allowing me to change the time when I found out that work kind of.
No problem. I hope somebody else found it. If you send me a link or whatever, I'll boost it.
Okay. Yeah. And send me any links if anything you want to promote or anything like that. I want everybody, like I keep saying, I want you to be a millionaire. I want Brian Bow to be a million. I want you guys to do nothing but make comic books, because that makes my life great. I love just sitting out, I'd like to be a millionaire too, but
what I really want is what I want is for Tonic Mole to be a millionaire first because he's driving us crazy.
Right. And
So,
nobody wants him to leave his house.
And Brian Ball needs to be a millionaire, and Arthur Frisell.
You know, because if Tonic Mole has to go back out into the world, it's not going to end well.
No,
you know, he needs to be home in the basement drawing where
counting his money.
Yeah, just staying out of everybody's way.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you again, and thank you guys for watching. Thank you. I'm gushing again. At the beginning, I was gushing. I calmed down, and now I'm gushing again. Thank you so much, Terry. You were a pleasure to talk to. And
Thanks, John.
if you ever want to come back, please do. I would love to. I got more to talk about, but unfortunately, the world ruins it. Work ruins everything.
Yeah.
There
you go.
But thank you, everybody. We're going to go now.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.